Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. This is Felicia Moore, your Atlanta City Council President. We'll give everybody 1 minute to join us, and then if you don't join us when we're started, we can certainly post this so that you can watch it, and please share it with your friends. It's 1 o'clock, and what I'm trying to do is try to keep in touch with you. We have to keep touch base with each other, most definitely by virtual means, by technology, and this is our way to do it. Thank you all for joining me. As you all know, the mayor just finished a phone call, and that was posted. You can go to the Atlanta City Council page to hear her update on what's going on in the city. And I'm going to talk about one thing first, which I always start this out with because I think that being in this situation where we're dealing with a pandemic, this hits home, particularly as they start to look at federal funds, where they go to the state, how the state allocates them. You all have received, and I know it's going to come on backwards, but it is our census 2020. And I'm asking you, you've been getting cards in the mail, you've gotten the actual form in the mail. If you're old school, just fill out that form. They have a self-addressed stamped envelope. All you have to do is fill it out and put it in the mail. I know they've extended the deadline, but I'm just asking you to make sure you do it as soon as possible. You have plenty of time because you should be sheltering in place and staying at home. But let me tell you why it's important. It's important because for many reasons. One, about how districts are drawn for your elected officials, who your elected officials will be based on those districts. But the most important thing right now, particularly when we're dealing with this pandemic situation, is that we as cities get federal funding. And we want to make sure that that funding that we get is representative of the people who live here. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that you're counted. So please don't ignore this amongst all of the other things that we're dealing with. Please make sure you fill out your Census 2020 information. I'll remind you that again before we leave. Tomorrow at 11:30, the City Council will be having a conference call with the mayor, and we will post that information on how you can either call in and listen or where you can get it. Usually the Atlanta City Council page or the City of Atlanta page, Facebook and Twitter, where you can hear that conversation live. There have been a lot of questions about the tree ordinance. I think that has died down. As you all know, that work session has been canceled. We are dealing with the pandemic situation, and so we're not going to be dealing with that. I know many of you still have concerns about that, and when we pick that up, whenever that will be, we will certainly post that information. And again, information is key. And if you haven't liked my page, Felicia Moore, Atlanta City Council President, I really encourage you to do that because we post everything on that page. Some of you are looking from either another page I have or my timeline. I'm encouraging you to as well go and like Felicia A. Moore, Atlanta City Council President, so that you can get information and exclusive content. But considering what we're dealing with now, we are sharing this, but typically when I do Facebook Lives, I only do them on this page, but we're sharing them on all pages because we want to make sure that the maximum amount of people get the information. I also was asked last time about MPU's boards and commissions. The mayor has put an executive order that has suspended those. Our zoning review board, board of zoning adjustment, other commissions, boards, and authorities are not meeting because of this pandemic situation. The city of Atlanta is on teleconferencing, and so we are not teleconferencing, teleworking. And so we're doing everything from home, and many of the things that we normally do have been suspended. So please know that. I know some of you did get in some meetings before that executive order came out, but I did want to make you aware of that. We're in a shelter-in-place order, and so on the federal level, as you know, President Trump has just extended until the end of April the what is it called, social distancing requirements. On the state level, our Governor Brian Kemp has issued a shelter in place, particularly for those people who are medically fragile or vulnerable, but requiring that they shelter in place. And then on the city level, our mayor has issued an executive order, which she just reissued because she has to do that every 72 hours unless the council ratifies it, which asks everyone to shelter in place, to stay at home, not to leave your home unless you have an essential business that you have to conduct. The parks are open. The Beltline is open. Of course, she encouraged you earlier, and I will encourage you that if you do go to the parks, if you do go to the Beltline, that you need to keep those social distancing requirements. And I just heard on the news where the CEO for the Beltline is asking people not to come at all unless you're using the Beltline for an essential service. Now, everybody seems to want to flock to the same location. But if you just want to get out and enjoy nature, we've got over 130 parks, some small, some large, and they're not all being used. So why is everybody flocking to the same parks? I saw where Alan Holmes had posted that on Twitter, and I thought it was a good comment. Everybody's flocking to the same parks when there are many areas. The playgrounds are not to be used. All of those should be marked off. If they're not, the playgrounds are down, and you're not supposed to be playing basketball. And basketball is a contact sport, and it's not social distancing, and so that should not happen. And as it relates to the social distancing in the city, it is not occurring. I drove around on Saturday just to see what was going on. Did not get out of my car, so I was exercising my social distancing. And I saw two areas, or maybe three, of concern. One are our youth. For some reason, young adults and young people are not getting the message. And some parents are not getting the message. This is not time for play dates where you have other kids come over to play just to keep your kids company. This is not that time. You should be sheltering in place with your family and your loved ones and not crossing between two different people. That just doesn't work. Our young adults are not getting it. I'm seeing them meeting up in parking lots, meeting up in areas. So if you have a young adult in your household, please stress to them that this is extremely serious. There are people who are younger that are getting COVID-19 or the coronavirus, and I'm touching my face, which is a no-no. Shouldn't do that. And so I know that there was a baby, someone under the 18 months that has died. There have been children who have received it, as well as young adults and young people. So this is not just for, older people who have issues to be concerned about. Everyone can get it. So please stress that to your family, your friends, your neighbors. Call in, check on your neighbors, and make sure that they know. The other area that I saw of concern were our unsheltered persons. Those are the homeless that are on the street. I know that in our shelters, those persons are being diagnosed and being isolated and taken care of. They're also instituting new things in the shelters because, of course, shelters try to maximize their space and have as many people there as possible. They're now instituting other things to make sure that they are spread out and they're having as much distance as possible. But the ones that are not in a facility are a big concern. The mayor mentioned it today. She said that they submitted a plan to the governor. I'm going to try to find out what that plan is. Tomorrow I will be on a conference call related to the unsheltered homeless, and I know they've been working on testing as well as housing for those when they get tested so that they're not sort of roaming around while they're waiting on the test results. And it's good news. I heard that there is a test that may be coming out that can test people and give them the results in minutes instead of 5 days, as we've been hearing. Also, space for them if in fact they are diagnosed so that they can recover and not continue to spread. But one of the things that I noticed is typically there were a lot of church groups and others that were going out feeding the homeless. They're not doing that. But I did see one area that really concerned me where they were feeding and people, and the people who were doing that were not adequately masked and gloved, and the line was long, and they were packed together, and there was no social distancing taking place. That was Hurt Park. Then I went over by Woodruff Park, and I see people playing checkers or whatever they play. They're not social distancing. I saw a religious group that was preaching, and they were not social distancing, nor were the people who were standing around in the crowd looking at them. So people are not getting the message. I don't know what it's going to take, how many deaths it's going to take, but people need to get the message. So those are some of the concerns that I've seen. I have not seen the Beltline, but people have sent me pictures, and I've seen it. It's packed. If I was you, I would not go to any location, particularly the Beltline, to walk and exercise. I would do it on my own street where I can have plenty of room. I would go to many of the smaller, most beautiful parks that we have all over the city that are not being utilized, and enjoy the day and the weather if you just need to get out. So I see a couple of questions. Let me get my glasses so I'm sure I can read it. Hello, Mr. Walter Jordan. What can we do as it pertains to restaurant fees that are due? Who can I email? I'm concerned about tax by the drink taxes, business license fees that are due April 1st. So what I would do is to email the mayor's office because that would have to be an executive order that she would issue to suspend the payments of those. That's where I would start, is with the mayor's office. Hello, Ms. Caban, Robbie. Why hasn't the City of Atlanta implemented a tiny homes camp with access to resources when our homeless can also be carriers? So I was just mentioning our unsheltered population, and we certainly have got to find something. In the executive order, it says that they're exempt from sheltering in place, but encouraging them to find somewhere to go. We don't have anywhere for them to go. As far as a tiny house or tiny home location, I think that is a great idea and has been used in other cities. I've seen that being used across the country, but we'd have to, one, have the funds to purchase the tiny homes, and two, have the area and facility already mentioned out. I think in this emergency situation, trying to find housing through hotels, dorm rooms, those kinds of things that we can immediately access is the way that I'm hearing, Ms. Caban, based on the phone calls that that the city is going in. But I do think on a long term, a tiny house and or a modular home, I've seen different ones where we can find housing. And I'll say this about the housing for people who are homeless or in transition. We just have this homeless opportunity bond and other funds that we have targeted to the homeless. We have really got to find housing. And that's going to take all of us. People complain, which I get, they don't want to see the people without homes under bridges, on the street corners, in camps and tents. But the thing is, the next thing I have to say to people is you have to be willing to allow these facilities to be built, to be opened, and maybe be in your neighborhood and your community. And that's where we've run into problems over the past years. And as we identify places and locations where we can house people who are not without homes, but we can get them the services they need. If you're saying that they shouldn't be on the streets, please don't say they can't be in a facility in your community. People have to open their hearts to that. Okay, let me see. I have some more. And I was... Delily Jet Anthony. What are we concerned about right now? Not so much the tree ordinance rewrite as it is healthy trees that are essential to cut down right during the stay-at-home executive order. Excuse me, it's hard. Why? Because executive order says all construction and landscaping services are essential, even when the work are being done is not essential. This is putting all workers in those industries at risk. They are construction workers working right at the end of my drive all last week, and I noticed they were all standing within 2 or 3 feet of each other much of the time. No social distance taking place at all. So the mayor has exempt construction work and landscaping from the executive orders, and you would need to share that with the mayor if you have a concern about that and that it should be not exempt, as well as the fact that you have witnessed non-social distancing. But I do know that that is exempt. And we have posted some information on the parks, so you can see all the parks that are in the city. And I'm not sure what the other post is, but my staff is watching this as well, and they're posting information. So the shelter in place is in effect, and I'm sure it probably will be extended again. The social distancing was extended to the end of April by the president, and our governor has issued one for those who are vulnerable. Let's see, what else? For businesses, people who have businesses, I invite you and encourage you to go to Invest Atlanta's website for some funding that the city has for businesses. I'm not sure how much of that is left. I know we've been posting it on our site. It was $1.5 million, but there are plenty of resources. There are other resources. The Small Business Administration. You really have to kind of search those out, or like my page, Felicia Moore, Atlanta City Council President. And as we see those, we are posting those in real time as soon as we see them. Let's see. Also, I want to say this, and maybe I should do a post because I'm still getting calls. Many of you may have read where I was in self-isolation. I attended the National League of Cities Conference in Washington, D.C. A week later, we did get notice that 3 members that attended that conference of over 2,000 local elected officials, that is on the municipal side, that is city council members, city council presidents, mayors, etc. And I did self-isolation. It's in an overabundance of caution. I think there was only one session that was mentioned that one of the 3 people had attended that I attended. That was now 20 days ago since I returned back to Atlanta. I have had no symptoms and no problems whatsoever, but I did that in an overabundance of a caution. So I just want everybody to know, for those of you who have still been reaching out to me to ask me how I am just fine. But I do think that that really hits home the point of why you want to social distance and stay out of spaces and crowds and groups like on the Beltline and other places, is because you just don't know. Many people are walking around without symptoms at all. So they don't even know that they're sick. And you may be in their space. They say that because when you're talking, there are little droplets that come out that you can't see. and people could be affecting you. So you need to stay your 6 feet distance from people that you are not living with and that are having contact with. If you go to the store and have those essential runs, it's important for you to keep your social distance. Make sure you're 6 feet from the people in front of you. If you're going down an aisle and there are a lot of people down there, you might want to wait. Not you might want to. You want to. You really want to limit your exposure to other people. And the other reason why this is important is because, number one, it will keep you safe. But number two, it will help our hospitals. Our hospitals are in dire need. I'm getting emails from people who are healthcare providers in the hospitals. They are overwhelmed. They're asking people to stay home. They're concerned because they're not able to be tested. They want to be tested. I'm getting concerns from our city employees wanting to make sure that they have the adequate equipment. So obviously, getting those masks and gloves and all of that is something that is really, really urgent, and a lot of people don't have them. But you're not going to need them if you shelter in place and you stay at home. It's just so important. I know it's hard to do. I'm still trying to get mentally adjusted myself. So I don't, I just wake up in the morning and say, oh, where do I need to go? Where do I need to be? But when I find out that, hey, we are in a pandemic, you're sheltering in place, then I realize, what I need to do around the house. So please, if you have any questions for me or things that you would like for me to talk about now, or on our next conversation, please let me know now. We've got about 9 more minutes. I do want to thank all of you for joining. We have posted several pieces of information on the comments, but again, you can find these on our page. We daily post the numbers, and the numbers, while they are shocking for the numbers that are being reported, understand, and this is something that's bugging me, we are very much behind, very, very much behind in testing people. We're not testing people. So when those tests really get to rolling out and people are able to get tested, those numbers will soar. But the reason why you need to shelter in place and not get sick and not get other people sick is because the hospitals cannot handle it. What you don't want to happen is for you or your loved one or someone you know who's critically needs to go to the hospital, and they need a respirator, and a ventilator, and they cannot get one because we're out. You don't want them exposing themselves. And if you have minor symptoms, there are lines where you can call your doctor. Don't just go rushing to the emergency room. Don't go rushing to your doctor. Call them, get the protocol before you come. Of course, if you're in a very dire situation, you can always call 911, but I would encourage you to check with your doctor. I posted an article that said that one of the symptoms that hadn't been talked about is that prior to really getting the bad symptoms, some people are losing their sense of smell and taste. So that's something else to think about if you find yourself running into that, where you may need to think about that. So we got a few more minutes. I want to thank all 31 of you and others who have come and gone for joining us. We have 6 minutes, and so I want to go back to where I started while I'm waiting on my last questions. Census 2020, you have it in the mail. Don't disregard it. Do not disregard it. Please fill it out and send it in. We're going to need everyone counted, because we're going to need each and every dollar that we can get from the federal government to help our city recover, help our businesses recover, help our hospitals recover. All of that is extremely, extremely important. Also, as you all know, this is tax season. You are typically supposed to do it April 15th. The deadline has been extended to July. So I wouldn't wait, because the sooner you get it in, and particularly if you use direct deposit, you'll get your check that they are sending from the federal government as aid for this pandemic situation. Thank you, Shanda Lewis. He said 5 minutes online if you fill out that Census 2020. So you want to get that done. Our state has moved back the deadline for your state filing as well. So that is another issue that you need to be dealing with at this time. Let's see. What else did we have? There's so much going on. Your taxes, the census, your taxes, both federal and state. I'm not sure what they're doing with your car emissions, but if you have them during this time, I do know that you can file those online as well. So, Ms. Caban, what is being done to support low-income subcontracted workers at our airport to keep our airport places sanitary? I do know that they are still working at the airport. However, the airport is not very much being used. There are very few flights that are coming in and out. The council, it has at their last meeting, gave some relief to some of the concessionaires so that they could probably keep some of their workers on for a while. But of course, the airport is pretty much a ghost town now because a lot of flights are not going out. A reminder that college students at home right now who normally live away from home in a dorm or off-campus housing should not be included as part of your household on the census. Okay, Ms. Anthony, that's what she says. I'm not sure about that, but please make sure you fill it out correctly and follow all of the instructions. So, I hope these are helpful. I want to thank you all for thanking us. We will continue to post information. There are many in the comments, those for businesses. I do want to wrap up by saying not only do you need to fill out the Census 2020, I keep pumping that because it's extremely important, but I do want to end with you checking on your neighbors, making sure that you check on your neighbors, particularly those that are elderly. In my neighborhood, I live in historic Collier Heights, and many of the residents are longtime residents, first-time residents. They're in their 80s and 90s and beyond. And I've been calling on them, and I was surprised, even though I know most older people watch the news all day, that they are not necessarily educated about keeping people out of their homes. This is a bad time. It's keeping people separated. If you are going to the grocery for them or whatever, leave it at their door. Keep your distance from them. We want them to be healthy, and we want them to know what's going on. So just check on your neighbors, check on your friends, be safe, stay home, and shelter in place. It's important. And particularly if you see some young people, young adults, kids, just may need to just remind them that this can affect them as well. And it's important for them to be careful out here. Thank you all for joining us for conversations with your council president. I will do them as needed. And I will be back again Monday at 1 o'clock unless things happen so quickly that I need to get back to you urgently. But again, if you haven't liked my Facebook page, Felicia Moore, Atlanta City Council President, you won't miss a thing. I'm on Instagram as well, and I'm on Twitter as well. But right here is where you get that information. Please stay safe, stay home, stay your distance, and fill out that census form. Okay, one more comment. Many cities and towns, of course you always want to come up with comments right when I'm getting off, across the country don't have the same level of resources and leadership as Atlanta to combat the crisis. Given your experience in this crisis today, what are some early lessons you could share with other municipalities? And I do share my information, and actually I get some good information from other cities. I'm on many conference calls, but one that we really share a lot of information, the National League of Cities. I'm on a conference calls with council presidents and vice mayors from across the country, and we're sharing best practices and what we're doing in our city. I'm glad to say the City of Atlanta is doing a lot of it. Some things that we're not doing, but we are sharing that information. And I would just say keeping the conversation going and sharing information. That is the big number one thing. People need to know on a real-time basis what's going on. Okay, the Humane Society is donating pet food for people in need. That is good to know. The pets have to be fed as well. And I am sure I ran across, this is Joy Smith, this at the end where it says, where if someone lives somewhere else outside, oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. My son was a part of my census, but at the end I was able to check military assignment. Thank you for that information. Thank you all for joining. This is another conversation with your council president. Keep the comments coming, and my staff and myself will answer them. Have a blessed day and stay safe. Take care.